I was staring at the computer screen, but my eyes were not really looking at the numbers in front of me. My hands were frozen on the keyboard. The office was quiet, everyone had gone home, but I was still there, pretending to work. What I was really doing was trying to stop myself from crying. My name is Emily, I'm 29 years old and I live in Seattle, Washington. To the world, I look like a young woman with a stable job, a nice apartment and a future that anyone would admire. People often tell me I'm lucky. But if they could see inside me, they would know the truth. I was not lucky. I was trapped. My job wasn't the problem. I worked as an assistant manager in a marketing firm and I was good at it. My coworkers respected me and the office had a friendly energy most days. But there was one person who made every day heavy, confusing, and full of secret emotions. My boss. He wasn't cruel, he wasn't unkind. In fact, he was the opposite. He was too kind, too careful, too close. Every small gesture, every look, carried a weight that pressed on my heart. And the worst part? I let it happen. I let myself feel things I shouldn't. I would wake up in the morning, put on my professional smile, wear the clothes that said confident career woman, and walk into the office like everything was fine. But inside I was lying to myself. Pretending I didn't notice the way he lingered when he spoke to me. Pretending I didn't hear the softness in his voice that wasn't there with anyone else. Pretending that his kindness was only kindness and nothing more. The truth was, I was living a double life. On the outside I was just an employee doing my work. But inside I was a woman caught in something I couldn't name. It wasn't love, not yet. It wasn't friendship either. It was a dangerous middle place. And I was already too deep in it. That night, as I finally shut down my computer and picked up my bag, I heard his voice behind me. Emily, can you come to my office for a moment? My heart sank. I told myself it was just work. Just a small task. But when I stepped into his office and closed the door, I realized this was not about work anymore. That night when he called me into his office, I realized this was not just about work anymore. The next morning I walked into the office earlier than usual. The city was still waking up, streets wet from last night's rain, coffee shops just opening, people hurrying with umbrellas in hand. I told myself today would be ordinary. Just another work day. But the truth is, nothing felt ordinary anymore. From the outside my life looked safe. I had a good job, a small but cozy apartment, and enough money to pay my bills without worrying every month. My family back home in Ohio often told me how proud they were of me, their daughter living in the big city. My friends envied me, thinking I had it all together. What they didn't see was how silent my heart had become. At work my boss, Daniel, treated me with a respect and warmth that no one else received. It started small, almost unnoticeable. He remembered how I took my coffee. He asked if I got home safe after long days. He said things like, "Don't stay too late, Emily. You deserve rest." On the surface it was harmless. But in the quiet corners of my heart, those words planted something I couldn't control. I kept telling myself, he's married. He has a wife. He has a family. That should have been enough to stop the thoughts. But it wasn't. Because when he looked at me, there was something unspoken in his eyes. Something that made me feel both seen and trapped. Day after day I lived inside that prison. The office walls became my cage. Every meeting, every shared smile, every accidental touch when we exchanged papers, it all built a world where I was both wanted and forbidden. Sometimes I tried to convince myself I was imagining it. That maybe he was just naturally kind and I was reading too much into it. But then something would happen to break that lie. Like the way he once brushed a strand of hair away from my face during a late-night project. Or how he lingered by my desk long after our conversation was finished. It was killing me slowly. One Friday evening, just as I was packing my bag to leave, Daniel walked over to my desk. His voice was casual, but his words carried a weight that made my chest tighten. "Emily, are you doing anything this weekend? I was thinking maybe we could grab dinner just to talk about that new project. Somewhere outside the office. It might help us think more clearly." My throat went dry. I wanted to say no. I wanted to remind him that we were crossing a line. But all I could manage was a weak smile. "Sure, maybe." That night I sat on my bed staring at my phone waiting for his message. When it finally came, it wasn't about the project at all. It was simple. It was personal. You deserve more than late nights at the office. I'd like to see you smile again. My hands shook as I read those words. My heart was racing, my mind screaming at me to stop, to delete, to forget. But instead I saved the message like it was something precious. I hated myself for it. And yet I couldn't let go. The next Monday I walked into the office pretending everything was the same. But it wasn't. Not anymore. Every time I looked at him I felt the invisible chain pulling tighter around me. I was still free technically. But my soul was not. On the surface my life was beautiful. A stable job. A kind boss. A promising career. But inside I was already locked away. And then one small discovery changed everything. That afternoon while he was in a meeting I went into his office to drop off some files. I placed the folder on his desk and was about to leave when I noticed his jacket hanging on the chair. Something slipped out of the pocket, just a small card. I bent down to pick it up. It wasn't a business card. It wasn't a receipt. It was a handwritten note. My name was on it. I froze. My heart pounded as I read the first line, written in his familiar handwriting. Emily, there's something I need to tell you. He made me dinner. I said thank you. Then I found something in his jacket, and my hands started shaking. I couldn't sleep that night. The note in Daniel's jacket kept replaying in my mind. I hadn't read the whole thing, I couldn't. My hands had been shaking too much, and the fear of being caught stopped me from looking further. But the few words I saw were enough to break me open. Emily, there's something I need to tell you. It was real. I wasn't imagining it. The feelings between us weren't just in my head. And that terrified me more than anything. Because suddenly I was back in a place I thought I had buried years ago. It started with a scent, the smell of rain on the streets as I walked home. That smell always carried me back to him. His name was Ryan. I was 24 when we met. Fresh out of college, full of dreams, living in a small apartment with barely enough money to survive. Ryan was my everything back then. He was older, confident, and made me feel like the world was ours to take. We used to sit on the roof of my apartment building, drinking cheap wine and talking about the future. He promised me love, safety forever. But forever didn't last. One night he didn't come home. Then another. Then another. I told myself he was busy, stressed, or maybe needed space. But the truth arrived in the form of a phone call, from a woman I had never met. She told me she had been with him for almost a year. That he had promised her the same forever he promised me. I can still hear her voice, calm and almost apologetic, as if she was the one who had to comfort me. That was the night my world collapsed. I swore I would never let myself be that vulnerable again. Never let love take away my strength. So when I got the job at Daniel's company 2 years later, I wasn't looking for affection. I was looking for stability. A safe place to build my future. I convinced myself I could bury Ryan's ghost by filling my life with work. But ghosts don't stay buried. Daniel's kindness reminded me too much of the way Ryan used to look at me in the beginning. The gentle words, the protective gestures, the promises hidden between the lines. That was why it hurt so much. Because deep down I knew how easily kindness could turn into betrayal. And yet I couldn't stop myself from being pulled toward it. One rainy evening I was walking out of the office when Daniel offered me a ride. Normally I would have said no. But that day I was tired and my umbrella had broken. So I got into his car. The smell of leather, the soft hum of the radio, the silence between us. It was all too familiar. I looked out the window watching the water hit the glass and suddenly I was back with Ryan. Sitting in his car listening to the same quiet music, believing love was safe. I blinked hard trying to shake the memory. But Daniel must have noticed something in my expression because he asked softly, "Emily, are you okay?" I wanted to say yes. I wanted to pretend. But instead the words slipped out before I could stop them. "I've been here before." He looked confused. "What do you mean?" I quickly shook my head. "Nothing. Forget I said that." But he didn't push. He just nodded, eyes on the road, hands steady on the wheel. That silence was heavier than any words. That night, alone in my apartment, I pulled out an old box from the back of my closet. Inside were pictures of Ryan, letters, little memories I swore I'd never look at again. I held one photo in my hand, me and him smiling like the world was ours. I thought about how easily I had fallen, how quickly it had all turned to dust. Tears slid down my cheeks as I whispered to myself, "Why am I doing this again?" Because that was the truth I had been hiding. I didn't fall into Daniel's world by accident. I had walked straight into it because part of me was still broken. I hadn't healed. I had only pretended to. And now my past was colliding with my present. The ghost of Ryan was everywhere. In Daniel's kindness, in his words, in the way he made me feel seen. I had run from my heartbreak, buried it under work and routine, but all I had done was delay the pain. And the worst part was Daniel wasn't just my boss. He was a married man. That fact should have been the wall that stopped me. But instead, it became the chain that pulled me deeper into shame. I knew I was losing myself again. Just like before. I buried the past. Until it texted me again after 4 years of silence. After that night I made myself a promise I would stop. I would bury my feelings and keep my life clean. I told myself, "Emily, this is your job. Nothing more. Nothing less." So I pretended. Every morning I walked into the office with my head held high, my coffee in hand and a practiced smile on my face. I said good morning to my coworkers, I laughed at their small jokes and I acted as if Daniel was just my boss and nothing more. But pretending doesn't heal you. It only makes the wound deeper. Daniel noticed first. He wasn't stupid. He knew me too well by then. "You've been quiet lately," he said one afternoon while we were reviewing a report together. His tone was casual but his eyes searched mine. I forced a smile. "Just tired. Too many late nights." He didn't press, but I could feel his silence wrapping around me, heavier than words. The days turned into weeks. I kept my distance as best as I could. No extra conversations, no long stares, no late-night projects. But the tension didn't go away. If anything, it grew stronger. It felt like carrying a secret inside me, one that screamed every time he walked by. One evening after work, I met my best friend Hannah at a little diner near my apartment. She had known me since college, through every high and low, through Ryan, through the heartbreak. She took one look at me that night and sighed. "You look like a ghost," she said, stirring her coffee. "What's going on, Em?" I tried to laugh it off. "Nothing. Just work." But Hannah wasn't fooled. She leaned across the table, eyes sharp. "Don't lie to me. You're carrying something. I can see it all over your face." The words broke something in me. Before I could stop myself, I whispered, "It's Daniel." Her eyes widened. "Your boss." I nodded, shame burning my cheeks. "I don't want this, Hannah. I swear I don't. But it's happening anyway. He's married and I can't breathe when I'm around him. It feels like I'm losing myself again." She reached for my hand. "Emily, you can't let history repeat itself. You already gave your heart to someone who didn't deserve it. Don't give it to another man who can't be yours." Her words cut through me. I wanted to promise her I would stop. But all I could do was nod and wipe away the tears that had escaped without my permission. I thought I was being careful after that. Thought I was keeping everything inside. But one night as I left Hannah's apartment, I didn't realize Daniel was calling me. I picked up the phone without thinking, my voice still shaky from the conversation with my friend. "Emily," he said softly. "You okay?" And in that moment something inside me cracked. I couldn't lie anymore. "No," I whispered. "I'm not okay." There was silence on the line. A long silence that felt like the whole world had stopped. Finally he said, "Then talk to me. Tell me what's going on." I almost told him everything right then. But fear won. I hung up before I could answer. The next day at work, the air between us was different. He looked at me like he knew, like he had heard the truth hidden behind my silence. And the worst part was he wasn't angry. He was gentle. He was patient. He was waiting. That patience was my undoing. Because one afternoon as I sat in the break room staring blankly at my coffee, Hannah's words came back to me. "You look like someone carrying a love that doesn't belong to her." And she was right. I wasn't carrying my own love. I was carrying his. A love that didn't belong to me. A love that never should have started. I closed my eyes, tears slipping down my face, and whispered to myself, "I can't pretend anymore." She said I looked like someone carrying a love that wasn't mine. That's when I stopped pretending. The breaking point came on a Tuesday evening. The office was nearly empty, the sky outside already dark. I was at my desk pretending to finish a report, when Daniel stepped out of his office and stopped by me. "Emily," he said quietly. "Can we talk?" My heart thudded. I knew this moment was coming. I had been running from it for weeks, but you can only run for so long. I nodded and followed him into his office. The door clicked shut behind us and suddenly the air felt heavy, too heavy to breathe. He didn't sit at his desk. Instead he leaned against the window, arms crossed, eyes fixed on me. For a long moment neither of us spoke. The silence stretched until it felt unbearable. Finally he said, "I know something's wrong. And I think I know what it is." My throat tightened. "Daniel." He shook his head softly. "No more pretending, Emily. Not with me." And just like that the dam broke. The words poured out of me raw and trembling. "I can't do this anymore," I whispered. "I can't keep walking into this office acting like nothing is happening when everything inside me is falling apart. I feel things I shouldn't. I know you're married. I know this is wrong. But I can't stop it. And I hate myself for it." My hands were shaking as I spoke, but I didn't look away. I wanted him to see the truth, the pain, the guilt. He didn't interrupt. He just listened, his face calm, almost sorrowful. When I finally stopped, the silence filled the room again. Then in the softest voice he said, "I already knew." The words hit me like a blow. My breath caught in my throat. You knew." He nodded. "I felt it, Emily. Every time we spoke, every time we lingered too long, every time I caught myself thinking about you when I shouldn't. I knew." Tears blurred my vision. "Then why didn't you stop it? Why didn't you say something?" His eyes dropped to the floor. "Because I didn't want to. Because part of me wanted it too." My chest ached at his confession. For a fleeting moment I wanted to close the space between us, to forget everything and just let myself fall. But then I thought of his wife. His family. My own broken promises to myself. I shook my head, choking on my tears. "We can't, Daniel. We can't do this. It will destroy both of us." He finally looked up, his eyes full of pain. "I know." The silence that followed was unbearable. We didn't move. We didn't touch. We just stood there staring at the truth between us. Finally I turned toward the door. My steps felt heavy, like I was walking through water. As I reached for the handle, his voice stopped me. "Emily," he said softly. I turned, tears streaming down my face. He gave me a faint, broken smile. "Thank you for not lying to me one last time." I couldn't speak. I just nodded, opened the door and walked out. That was the night everything ended. Not with a kiss. Not with a fight. But with quiet heartbreak, with the truth we could no longer run from. I left. And as I closed the door he said, "Thank you for not lying one last time." The days after that conversation felt like walking through fog. I still went to the office, still answered emails, still smiled when people passed my desk. But inside I was empty. Daniel and I kept our distance. No long stares, no quiet moments, no late night calls. We became what we were supposed to be all along, boss and employee. Nothing more. But silence has a sound. And it filled every corner of my life. After a few weeks I made a decision. I couldn't stay there anymore. Not because of anger, not because of shame, but because every desk, every meeting room, every hallway carried a memory I didn't want to carry anymore. So I handed in my resignation. Daniel didn't fight it. He just nodded when I told him, his eyes tired but kind. That was the last real conversation we had. I started fresh at a small marketing firm across town. The pay was less, the office smaller, but it felt lighter. I no longer had to hold my breath every time I walked into work. Still, healing wasn't easy. Some nights I sat alone in my apartment, staring at the ceiling, replaying his words. "I already knew. Thank you for not lying one last time." They echoed like soft ghosts, reminding me of what almost was, of what never could be. To cope, I began journaling. Every night I wrote down the thoughts I was too afraid to say out loud. I wrote about Ryan, about Daniel, about myself. About how I had spent years running from my pain, pretending I was fine, burying feelings instead of facing them. Slowly the pages began to heal me. One Sunday morning as I was cleaning, I found an envelope tucked inside one of my old work folders. My hands trembled when I saw the handwriting. Daniel's. I sat down at the kitchen table, heart racing, and opened it. Inside was a short note. Emily. You are stronger than you think. I hope one day you will see yourself the way I saw you. Not as someone broken but as someone brave. Take care of yourself. D**. Tears blurred my vision as I read those words. For the first time I didn't feel trapped. I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. Because maybe love isn't always about being together. Sometimes it's about letting go. Sometimes it's about recognizing the line you cannot cross and choosing to walk away anyway. I folded the note and placed it gently in my journal, not as a wound but as a reminder. A reminder that even in heartbreak there can be honesty. Even in endings there can be respect. Now when I walk through the city streets I no longer feel the chains of my past pulling me down. I still think of him sometimes but not with pain. With gratitude for the lesson, for the silence, for the truth. And if you've ever loved someone you could not keep, if you've ever carried a love that didn't belong to you, I want you to know this. You're not alone. We all have storms. But the silence after can be the beginning of something new. If you've ever felt like me, you're not alone. Tell me your story in the comments.